Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. Trending on Twitter was the term grocery ID. And of course, every day, if we ever see something like this trending, or this is something that's getting a lot of publicity, anything that you have a chance to tie in truth into, I look at it as an opportunity to wake people up to what's really going on, right? So you might say, what is grocery ID? And why is it trending? Well, grocery ID is trending because Donald Trump said this in a statement when he was talking about the current state of inflation and everything that's going on with Biden and Harris. He said, quote, "You used to be able to get cereal for 20, 30 bucks a pound. Now it's at least $100 a pound probably. They debit it straight from your account when you show them your grocery ID." So naturally, it's trending because people out there who are asleep, who actually get their news from the mainstream media, which is not news, it's conditioning. You know, the same people that are keeping them in this left-right divide, the same people that are fueling all of this hatred, those people don't have a clue about grocery ID. In fact, they're all laughing about it. They're thinking that it's a hilarious thing, but in reality, they're working towards a grocery ID because it's called your digital ID. So a lot of people out there heard Trump's quote, and they're all making a mockery of it. They're saying this guy's so out of touch with reality that he thinks you need an ID to buy a loaf of bread. But the fact of the matter is, eventually you will need a digital ID to buy a loaf of bread because you will not be able to buy or sell without this ID. And if you don't know how history has worked when it comes to communist societies, grocery IDs are nothing new. There used to be grocery IDs in the Soviet Union. People would have shopper ID cards to buy groceries. This, of course, has to do with rationing, which, of course, Democrats out there don't realize that everything that they're promoting with this woke and Democrats are nice people, what they're really promoting is eventually rationing, because communists and the Communist Party will keep track and monitor everything you buy and sell, and you will be able to get your groceries, of course, and that'll be rationed. You'll be allowed X amount of this, X amount of that, and everything will be tracked. And that's where the carbon footprint comes into play. But let me start here by showing you, if you ever saw this clip before, in China, of how a tourist went to China and used or wasn't able to buy food because they didn't have a digital ID. And in fact, they tried to work their way around it, which is something that we'll all be trying to do, I'm sure, if you believe at least that the digital ID ties in to the mark, at least when it's embedded inside your genetic code. But even when this person was trying to buy food there, she was struggling using a gift card because they wanted her biometric data, which I'll get into in a few minutes here. Biometric data, digital ID. Do you see where this is all headed? Total control. But of course, they want you to see something like Donald Trump talking about a grocery ID, and they want you to think he's senile, that these are crazy ideas. He thinks that you need a grocery store card to be able to buy cereal. You need a grocery store card to be able to buy eggs this week. Well, that's what the future looks like in a communist society. Take a look at this clip if you've never seen it before about China and how this person wasn't able to buy food because they didn't have a digital ID.
So the latest in this dystopian outrage that is now all of China, apparently, is I once again cannot buy food. A couple days ago, my uncle and my cousin helped me get a cell phone that is linked to a Chinese bank card so that I can buy anything. But now, apparently, it has been flagged for some reason, and I have to pass facial recognition identity verification, which is insane, because all I want to do is just spend my gift card balance on this debit card. I can't believe I'm doing this. I have to open my mouth. Oh my God. Terrifying. Oh. And of course, because it was my cousin who set this up for me, I did not pass verification. I guess it's a good thing that the Chinese app is not racist. But now I once again can't buy anything.
And of course, you could take that with a grain of salt, but China at the moment is implementing their digital ID plan. And if you don't know about China and their surveillance and how their social credit score works, I have videos on the website that everybody should check out. I'll probably put some more videos out about that here. Because remember, every country is going to mirror China. It's going to be a communist society. It's global communism where the government overreach is beyond comprehension. So you might see that and you might say, well, that'll never happen in America. You'll say, whoa, okay, well, something like that would never happen here anyway. You will not need a digital ID to be able to buy bread. But then you start saying, well, how would they get you to get a digital ID? And you think about stories like recently. Was your social security number stolen in the national public data breach? You know, formulated news that they create to make you want in the future a digital ID to convince you that, well, we need to switch this whole system up, this infrastructure up. And of course, that's all part of the sabotage that you see going on around you. And if you haven't paid attention, before I get into how the EU right now has their biometric entry exit system, which will be using biometrics. In other words, your face, scanning your fingerprint to get in and out of the EU, to move around within the EU because of migrants, how they've deliberately allowed all these migrants in. I'll get into that in a second. But for those of you that don't understand how with the grocery ID, it's trending, right? How they're going to make that work, where you actually sit here and you go, well, even if there is a digital ID, why would they care of how much food I buy? Why would they they don't care. The digital ID has nothing to do with it. But if you're paying attention, it does. It has everything to do with it, because when you start connecting the dots and you see what they're doing at every single angle, because they're coming at us from a lot of angles, and you pay attention to all this stuff with the climate. You know how the alt-right media keeps talking about climate change being a cult? It's more than just a cult. Climate change is enslavement. And they're tricking you by obviously them manipulating the weather through geoengineering, but they're tricking you and they're programming you into being conscious of your carbon footprint. You keep hearing them say it and nobody's like paying attention to it. They keep saying your carbon footprint, your carbon footprint, your carbon footprint. And everybody just goes, well, what about these rich people? And they're like, well, what about you? And they go, well, I don't even know what that means. And they're like, well, let's see what you buy. Let's see. And they go, I don't know about that. And then as time goes by, they just get more desensitized to it. And then you start seeing celebrities change their behavior, even though in real life, the celebrities are not changing their behavior. They're just telling you that they are to influence and social engineer you into it. So if you think it's a crazy notion that there's going to be a grocery ID, and we're never going to get to that point even with the digital ID, just remember the carbon footprint and how they're telling us about carbon footprint scorecards. Beef, lamb, cheese, shrimp, pork, poultry. What's good? What can I buy? What's strong and negative on my carbon footprint? Because of course that's going to be the mechanism that's in place. It's all in the name of the climate. It's not tyranny. It's in the name of climate and the environment. So when we restrict you from buying bread because your carbon footprint for the month, your allowance for the month is too high, you can't complain about it because you're doing it for the environment. There's nothing to do with tyrants, right? See, this is how it all works. Here they are even at the World Economic Forum talking about this sinister idea.
We're developing through technology an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Your individual carbon footprint tracker, where you're traveling, where you're eating, what you're buying. This is what they have envisioned for Democrats and Republicans. Guess what? You don't have to be a member of one party versus the other, because people out there might say, well, this is what the Dems are doing, so I'm a Democrat. It doesn't matter for me. Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. They'll be smiling at you as they start telling you, and you say, wait a minute, I voted for you. I supported you. I was with you when you were going against a lot of people out there who were saying that you guys were going to actually do what you're doing now. And I said you would never do that. Why are you doing it? Well, you should have listened to them, because we are doing that. We are taking away your rights. In fact, we're going to freeze your bank accounts. And we don't have to do it. The police aren't going to show up. It's just when it's a digital ID, you see, you have an allotted allowance on there, right? Let's just say it's $100 and you can only spend it for the entire month. So when you tie in your carbon footprint all currency has changed because if your carbon footprint, if beef is the highest on there, well, guess what? If you buy one steak, you aren't going to be able to buy 2 loaves of bread with it. You have to wait till next month because that's all you get for the month because of the climate, right? See, that's the big, thing that they've created here. That's the big boogeyman they've created because they don't want you to be able to question man, right? They don't want you to say, well, these are tyrants, that are doing this. They're going to say, look, it's the climate. This is everybody. This is science, right? And you go, well, wait, they're talking about science, right? They're not talking about, Hitler. They're not talking about, the Roman Empire, but they are in reality talking about that. They're just hiding behind this geist that they built called the Climate Initiative, right? And that's what they'll be hiding behind with their grocery ID, which will really be the digital ID. And again, this is not a new notion. Rationing is not new. I've done many videos on rationing and communist regimes and how people how people live. And you want to say survive? They don't really survive. They live as slaves out in the free world. So the other story that's out there is one I've covered, which is the EU biometric entry-exit system, which is about to be launched in the EU on November 10th. Some of you may be in the EU, and some of you may be in America, or maybe another country listening to this. Every country is going to have this. There's a reason that they're deliberately doing this. These globalists are not doing this because they care about Mexicans and they want them to cross the border in America so they can have a better way of life. They're sabotaging the infrastructure. Without any care in the world, they know it's going to cause all this other chaos that goes on, which they're doing by design, order out of chaos. But they know you're going to scream for a system to be in place to block immigrants from coming in and out of countries. And that's exactly why the UK is bringing about their new biometric entry-exit system. And that's exactly why in America, you hear all this stuff about, oh my goodness, the border is wide open. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, eventually you're going to find out what are we going to do. Because when they change what the ID is, which they're doing with the voting system as well, right? Who's voting? It's fake ballots. People are just making them up, mail-in ballot. We need a new ID system. There's your digital ID, which ties into your grocery ID, which ties into your carbon footprint, which ties in everything. They're going to play the hero in all of this because that's how it's set up. They're going to come in, whether it's Trump, and it's interesting that Trump says grocery ID, right? How about a Freudian slip right there, right? For those people out there that defend Trump and say, well, he didn't really mean grocery ID. He was just using terminology there as if he doesn't know what the future looks like with a digital ID because he's going to be one of the masterminds behind this with his freedom cities and having immigrants coming in and out. This thing is set up perfectly for them when you look at all the problems going on in the world and how every single solution that they have all seems to come back to a digital ID when really none of this would be happening if they weren't doing it. They're the ones causing and flying in and funding immigrants to be in countries that they don't have citizenship in, right? They're the ones staging false flags and psyops and attacks on civilians and then telling you that these people crossed the border and just decided to come into America and kill people for whatever reason, right? For no motive whatsoever. They saw a girl, they do this. The government's doing all of it. And they're doing all of it because they're going to bring in this digital enslavement system. So people out there who are looking at it going, well, what's the solution? Get away from the tech. If Donald Trump wasn't one of them, and we all know that he is, if he wasn't one of them, he'd be talking about how we need to take a step back from technology. We need to go back to bartering. We need to go back to cash only. But what do you hear Trump talk about? Well, we're going to move forward with Bitcoin. We need freedom cities, which is, again, the Republican variation of a smart city, which is run on biometrics. It's all run on biometrics, right? So that's the solution in the UK, right? They're going the new entry-exit system, EES, is scheduled to launch on November 10th. Europe will deploy the most modern digital border management system in the world. Carriers, operators, train stations, airports, everyone is getting ready for the big day, according to Eva Johansson, who is the European Commissioner for Home Affairs. On launch, the EES will replace stamps in physical passports by digitally registering the data of non-EU citizens whenever they enter and exit external borders to ensure they don't stay in the area for more than 90 days in a 180-day period. Travelers will be required to submit fingerprint and face biometrics on their first crossing, right? So think about that. Think about how they're going to give you allotted time to be in certain places. They already do, in a sense, right, if you don't have a visa. But now, I mean, really, because nobody's really that fearful if they're in a country for a few days longer than their visa allows them to be. It's not a huge deal if they're leaving the country anyway. But now you're literally going to be monitored and tracked to the point, well, hey, this guy's been here too long. We could go and we can arrest him. We could find him here. You don't belong here. And people are going to go, oh, well, that's fine. That's the way it should be with immigrants, right? But then all of a sudden, when there's outbreaks, because there's going to be plenty more, I mean, they keep telling us, then you start seeing how, well, you can't go to this country. You were in this country while there was an outbreak, and now you're in that one. Well, we need to put you in a quarantine for 21 days to a month to 3 months to the rest of your life when you disappear like a fart in the wind because nobody finds you ever again, right? And it's not really because you were in contact with somebody they claimed had a virus. It'll probably be because you're a conspiracy theorist, because most conspiracy theorists will vanish out of thin air as this stuff continues to move forward. They'll just say and arrest these people and say, hey, well, they're violating this, they're violating that. They're not listening to this order. They're questioning. Oh, bye-bye. See you later, right? And it all comes in with technology. It all comes in with biometric data. It all comes in with biometric facial scanning. It all comes in with us allowing it, right? So the notion of a grocery ID being this big joke, that's what's funny to me, is that people out there are laughing at it, yet people like me are warning them about it. And what their mind just does is it just dismisses how we're headed towards that. They're just like, that's never going to happen. And when it actually happens, they'll defend the reason the government gives for the grocery ID. They'll say, well, I might have laughed about it 5 years ago, but because all that stuff happened with that breach with our Social Security, well, now it just makes sense to have everything logged and tracked, especially with the carbon footprint, because things are getting dangerous. Because all it takes is time, right? The more time they beat the carbon footprint into your head, climate change into your head, the more they do that while telling you that you need to be fearful of anything that's not digital, even though all these hacks are happening digitally, go figure, right? None of it makes any sense anyway, that they get you on board with a digital ID. The next thing you know, all of a sudden, somebody out there who feels like they have all these rights, little by little, you're going to keep seeing the government turn on you. Yeah, we don't really care that you're prideful in June. You've already allotted your carbon footprint. You're not allowed to go to a pride parade. Guess what? They're not going to happen anymore. And they're not going to happen here, there, everywhere. We're just going to start removing everybody's rights collectively. And it's because you allowed us to have more control than any human should ever be allowed to have. All thanks to the digital ID coming soon to every country near you. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.